Okay, so you know the attack helicopter joke? And it's like, haha, trans people are dumb. That's used largely by sort of dumb right-leaning people. Well, there is a left-leaning equivalent of the attack helicopter joke, not in its express target, but in the with the frequency with which this joke is made. And unlike the attack helicopter joke, there is very not exactly a grain of truth, more like a gigantic heaving beetroot of truth. You know, the grain turns into grains don't turn into fruit. Or vegetables. Beets are vegetables, right? Turn the screen. Hello. Biden hires all-female senior communications team. Names Neera Tanden director. We will talk about Neera Tanden. We'll get around to that. But in the meantime, Biden hires all-female senior communications team. How lovely. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, but I've made these jokes before. Shu, I think, collected all these headlines, you know, to the effect that I would. Biden picks first Latino to lead Homeland Security. My God. Homeland Security. Truly an agency in need of minority representation. Biden considers Daryl Blocker for his CIA director, which would make the former station chief and 32-year-old intelligence vet the first black person in the top job. You can almost feel all of the assassinated Latin American socialists cry out in solidarity from their unmarked graves somewhere in somewhere in a former fucking CIA black site. Michelle Flournoy could be the first woman to run the Pentagon, may bring many more women with her. And then, of course, a title we're all familiar with. The meme is, of course, for those of you who have already guessed it and hear it singing in your heads, the world needs more transgender female drone pilots or something to that effect. There's always that joke, you know? We need more female drone pilots. And that's you've seen this a million times before, yes? Unfortunately, it remains a good joke because it's rather saliently criticizing something that I actually have a pretty serious problem with. I feel like Shoeonhead has spent pretty much her entire YouTube career making fun of this specific thing, but I want to talk about why it's bad. Now, I want to be clear up front. I like diversity and representation. I like diversity in all things because diversity increases the range of things you're capable of experiencing. And I mean that like in literally every tier. If we're talking diversity of food, nobody argues against that, right? We all want to be able to enjoy like a wide variety of foods, even if you don't like many other types of food, even if you're a picky eater, the option's nice. And every once in a while you think, oh, yeah, maybe I do want shawarma. I love shawarma. I could go shawarma every day. But then you get to more esoteric kinds of diversity, cultural diversity. I loved exactly one part of Los Angeles, the city I was born in, and that was the fact that it's an incredibly diverse city. Drive around any direction, 5 minutes, you'll see 1,000 cultural influences, and it made the nightlife nice. There was a lot of interesting stuff to do in LA. You could spend your whole life there walking around. You'll never see everything. Now, I live Seattle area. It's about the same here. I like big cities for that reason. People say diversity is our strength. Well, considering the fact that America was literally built as an immigrants country, I mean, I feel like, and we're now the strongest country on earth. I feel like that motif speaks for itself. There are ways to handle a push for diversity incorrectly, though. And I think usually when those problems arise, it's because things are being handled condescendingly. So let me give you an example. You know, let's say, what did everyone get mad about? The Ghostbusters movie. You know what I mean? The new one, the one where it's all ladies. That movie wasn't very good, was it? I didn't see it. It seemed like a lot of people didn't like it, but a lot of the run up to that movie was sort of celebrating the fact that the leads were all female. And I don't have anything wrong with it's all women being Ghostbusters or whatever. But when you're selling something on the merits of its, I guess you wouldn't even call it diversity. If it's all women, it's about as diverse as it would be if it was all men. On the merits of its, non-traditional gender diversity or whatever, it can come off a little bit patronizing, I think. And you also have to wonder when it comes to stuff like, say, for example, um, positions of extreme power within the government. To what extent is a person's identity, their race, gender, relevant to their qualifications? And I want to touch back on that in just a second, if I may. Before I reiterate, I want to say this very, very clear. There's nothing wrong with having ladies or people of color in the government. I hope anyone watching this video knows that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with celebrating it either. I think not liberals, lefties. I think lefties misstep on this sometimes. Lefties will actually get contemptuous of the idea that there is value in diverse representation in places like government. I actually disagree with that, you know? Do I like Obama? No. You could fill in chat saying no there, if you would. I don't like Obama. But were there a lot of black kids who saw Obama and thought, wow, black people can be president? Probably. I mean, you see stuff like this with representation in media. I think representation in media is fantastic because media has such an effect on us. People shape their perception of how life should be through media. Imagine all the things that you have strong opinions on that you have never personally experienced and have only experienced through YouTube, movies, music, television. Think of everything. Think of things like the military and policing, for example. How many Americans have ideas about policing which are shaped by not actual empirical data about how policing works, but about movies on policing? Detective work. What's that one? Is it X-Files? There were a lot of ladies who got into detective work after the X-Files, I think, because there was a lady, part of the main duo there, right? I think it's the X-Files, right? I don't know why I'm looking this way. Chat's not here to correct me. I think it's the X-Files, yeah. People get an understanding of their place in life based on media. And if you have media and higher government, which is a kind of media in and of itself, exclusively dominated by white guys, that does send messages to everyone down the line. You know, I think the representation thing is important. But when does representation become a cloak for progressivism? See, that's the thing. If you have an institution like, say, for example, the Department of Homeland Security, not exactly a progressive institution, that, or the CIA, how much are you actually improving these agencies by putting people of color at the top of them? Now, again, I want to be clear. You don't have to justify putting like a black or a brown guy at the head of these institutions. Like Joe Biden and liberals, they don't have to explain to me or anyone else why it's better to do this. Otherwise, the default should remain the white guy. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm asking is, how much does this actually matter, you know? How much does it matter if the drone pilot is a woman? There's an infamous article. I'd pull it up if I could remember enough about it. It goes something like, her name is Candy. She's a drone pilot. She's sick of men. She deals death from 15,000 miles away. And honey, she's tired of you. Or something like that. And it was like I think it was from 2015. It was a news article and it was celebrating some female drone pilot. And I think that's honestly where this meme started, or at least that helped kicked it off quite a bit. And the problem with that article, the thing that made it so incredibly bad, was that it felt like it was celebrating the act of being a drone pilot because now a woman is involved. Listen, having women involved with drone piloting doesn't make drone piloting any less bad. It's just now you got a lady doing it, you know? And likewise, the CIA, not a biggest fan of the CIA and what they tend to do. Don't think it's going to be made one iota better by putting a black guy at the head of it. This is why there were so many disingenuous liberals who were saying that the choice between Biden and Bernie back during the Democratic primaries was a choice between two old white men. And there were some of them, they were saying they'll never vote for like a old white guy anymore. And they're referring to Bernie, whereas they would have voted for Kamala Harris or Warren, which is interesting because if you look at it, if you're looking at like policies about race or gender or transgender people or economic policy or any of that, Bernie Sanders was more progressive than any of these people. but they were choosing in the name of progressivism other people, less progressive people, because of their gender identity or their race. That's the worry. My worry is that there are going to be people who see this, or people who see this, or people who see this, and they're going to think, oh, these institutions are less bad now. They've been made better. They're progressive now. But of course, that's not true. The wheels, the mechanisms of power do not care who's running them. You could have put a black guy at the head of the transatlantic slave trade, and as long as that black guy was situated within the same collection of material interests as the person who came before him, I don't think that would have made life much better. In fact, you can go all throughout history and find examples of people of color who work against the interests of people of color, a la Thomas Sowell or Candace Owens, or women who act against the interests of women, like, Margaret Thatcher. It's not hard to find people like this. Or what they call her? She calls herself the rational feminist. What's her name again? I completely forget. Chat would tell me. Chat's not here. God, I miss chat. Oh, God, I miss chat. So, yeah, that's the meme. The female drone pilot meme. But keep in mind, by the way, in a completely neutral sense, as long as it's not being used to sort of mask real progressivism or otherwise, I like diversity. I mean, it's no coincidence that the Republican Party, which is decidedly more reactionary than the Democratic Party in a great many measurable empirical ways, is far, far more made up of white dudes than the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party is almost representative of the demographic population of the United States. It's not perfect. There are still more men than women, but it's in the ballpark. The Republican Party, I think, is like 90% white dudes when I'm talking about elected officials like senators and congresspeople and such. And there's a reason for that, and that's because these interests are reflected, I think, in the demographics, both of the population that votes for them and of the candidates that end up getting voted for. And I'd like to live in a world where there is no categorical bias or difference between a black or a white person getting voted, or a man or a woman, or a non-binary person, or a cis or a trans person, or hell, I'd love to live to see my first atheist president, I think that'd be nice. I'm always a little bit suspect of all the religious rhetoric that gets used during the presidential race. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. Ugh.